Imagine for a moment that you are standing in the agora of ancient Athens, the marketplace not just of goods, but of ideas, where philosophers gathered to debate the fundamental nature of existence. The year is approximately 450 BCE, and a revolution in human thought is unfolding. No longer content with mythological explanations for the workings of the world, these early seekers have begun to ask, what is the basic substance from which all things arise? What principles govern the transformations we witness in nature and in ourselves? In this crucible of inquiry, the elemental paradigm was born, not as an arbitrary classification system, but as a profound recognition of recurring patterns in nature that illuminate both the physical world and the landscape of human consciousness. The four elements, earth, fire, air, and water, emerged not merely as physical substances, but as fundamental organizing principles, archetypal energies that dance through all of creation, including the territory of the human soul. This ancient wisdom did not arise in isolation, nor did it begin with the Greeks. Across the globe, from the medicine wheels of indigenous North America to the five-element theory of Chinese philosophy, from the Ayurvedic traditions of India to the mystical systems of Egypt, humans recognized these same basic patterns, these essential qualities that form the building blocks of both matter and psyche. This remarkable cross-cultural convergence speaks to something profound, that the elements represent not arbitrary constructs, but perceptual archetypes embedded in human consciousness, transcending time and cultural boundaries. On the sun-drenched shores of Ionia, in what is now Western Turkey, the seeds of Western philosophy took root in the 6th century BCE. Here, amid the bustling trade ports where goods and ideas flowed freely from east to west, a remarkable shift in human thought began. A turn from mythological explanations toward rational inquiry, from divine narratives toward natural principles. The story of elemental philosophy begins with Thales of Miletus, traditionally honored as the first philosopher of the Western tradition. Standing at the edge where myth gives way to reason, Thales proposed a revolutionary idea, that water was the arch, the fundamental principle or element from which all things emerge. Imagine Thales observing the waters of the Aegean Sea, watching how this single substance could transform from liquid to solid to vapor, how it sustained all living things, how it shaped the land through its persistent flow. In water's remarkable qualities, he perceived a profound truth, that underlying the apparent diversity of existence might be a unified principle, a single substance capable of manifesting in countless forms. Following Thales came Anaximenes, who proposed air, not water, as the primary element. Observing the omnipresence of air, invisible yet essential, embracing all things yet confined by none, Anaximenes saw in it the perfect candidate for the fundamental substance of reality. For Anaximenes, air represented more than just the atmosphere. It embodied the principle of qualitative transformation through rarefaction and condensation. When rarefied, air became fire. When condensed, it became wind, then cloud, water, earth, and finally stone. This elegant theory explained the diversity of matter through a single principle of transformation, a remarkable prototype of both atomic theory and the modern understanding of states of matter. Into this evolving conversation stepped Heraclitus of Ephesus, whose cryptic utterances earned him the nickname the Obscure. "No man steps in the same river twice," Heraclitus famously observed, "for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man." In this profound insight, he captured the ceaseless flow of transformation that characterizes both the external world and our internal experience. Fire perfectly embodied this understanding, a dynamic process rather than a static substance, existing only through continuous transformation of fuel into heat, light, and ash. For Heraclitus, this ever-living fire was the logos, the underlying principle that gives coherence to a world of ceaseless flux. The threads of these earlier thinkers were woven into a comprehensive framework by Empedocles of Acragas, a fascinating figure who combined philosophical insight with poetic expression. Empedocles proposed that all things are composed of four roots, what we now call elements: earth, water, air, and fire. These elements were eternal and unchangeable in themselves, but combined in different proportions to create the infinite diversity of existence. For Empedocles, these elements were not merely passive substances, but divine forces, moved by the cosmic principles of love and strife in an eternal cycle of combination and separation. Love drew the elements together into complex forms. Strife pulled them apart again into their pure states. The history of the cosmos was the story of these cyclical phases, from a condition of perfect unity under the complete dominance of love to a state of total separation under the rule of strife, and back again. As these elemental ideas developed, they found their most systematic philosophical articulation in the work of Aristotle, whose comprehensive vision integrated and refined earlier elemental thinking into a coherent framework that would shape Western understanding for nearly 2 millennia. Aristotle's approach to the elements built upon his predecessors, but introduced important refinements. He defined each element according to its combination of 2 fundamental qualities: hot and dry, hot and moist, cold and moist, cold and dry. This system of paired qualities created a logical relationship between the elements, where adjacent elements shared one quality while differing in the other. This allowed for an understanding of how elements could transform into one another through the modification of their qualities. Earth could become water by replacing dryness with moistness. Water could become air by replacing coldness with heat, and so on. To the traditional 4 elements, Aristotle added a 5th, ether or quintessence, literally the 5th essence. This celestial element, found only in the heavenly realm beyond the moon, possessed properties distinct from the terrestrial elements. It moved in perfect circles rather than in straight lines, and neither increased nor decreased in quantity. This distinction between celestial and terrestrial realms reflected the clear difference visible to ancient observers between the apparently changeless, orderly movements of the stars and planets and the constant flux of the sublunary world. While modern cosmology has eliminated this division between terrestrial and celestial physics, the concept of a 5th element continues to resonate as a metaphor for transcendent integration, the emergent quality that arises when the 4 basic elements achieve perfect balance and harmony. While we've focused thus far on the Western philosophical tradition, elemental thinking developed independently across many cultures, suggesting that these patterns reflect something fundamental about human perception and cognition, rather than merely cultural constructs. In Chinese philosophy, the Wu Xing, or 5-element theory, identifies wood, fire, earth, metal, and water as the fundamental energies that govern both natural processes and human health. Unlike the Greek system, which traditionally presented the elements as substances with particular qualities, the Chinese approach emphasizes the dynamic relationships between elements, how they generate, control, and potentially overwhelm one another in continuous cycles of interaction. The Ayurvedic tradition of India developed another sophisticated elemental system centered around 3 doshas, or constitutional types, each formed by the combination of specific elements. This system recognizes that each constitutional type has characteristic strengths and vulnerabilities, that what supports balance for one person may create imbalance for another. Many indigenous North American traditions organize their understanding of the world through the medicine wheel, which maps elemental qualities onto the 4 directions: east, associated with air; south, associated with fire; west, associated with water; and north, associated with earth. The medicine wheel isn't merely a static map, but a dynamic tool for understanding cycles of all kinds: the seasons of the year, the times of day, the stages of life, the aspects of human nature. We move through these cycles continuously, with each direction offering its particular gifts and challenges. The existence of these parallel elemental systems across diverse cultures suggests that such frameworks aren't arbitrary constructs, but reflect fundamental patterns in human perception and experience. The Greek tradition excels at systematic classification and theoretical elaboration, providing clear conceptual frameworks for understanding elemental qualities and their interactions. The Chinese tradition brings sophisticated attention to dynamic relationships and cycles of transformation, offering nuanced understanding of how elements influence and modulate one another over time. The Ayurvedic tradition provides exceptional practical application to individual health and well-being, with detailed guidance for maintaining balance according to one's unique constitution. Indigenous traditions ground elemental understanding in direct relationship with the natural world, embedding abstract principles in concrete embodied practices connected to place and community. By appreciating these diverse approaches, we gain a richer, more multifaceted understanding of elemental psychology than any single tradition could provide. We begin to recognize these patterns not as cultural artifacts, but as perceptual archetypes that transcend specific historical and geographical contexts, fundamental ways that human consciousness organizes its understanding of both the external world and internal experience. As the scientific revolution transformed Western thought, elemental theory in its literal form gave way to the periodic table and atomic theory. Yet the psychological insights embedded in elemental thinking continue to influence how we understand human nature and experience, often in ways not explicitly acknowledged. The Romantic movement of the late 18th and early 19th centuries represented a reaction against Enlightenment, rationalism, and mechanistic science, reclaiming the value of feeling, intuition, and symbolic understanding. This romantic sensibility laid the groundwork for depth psychology, which emerged in the late 19th century through pioneers like Freud, Janet, and Jung. Carl Jung's analytical psychology in particular reveals strong resonances with elemental thinking. His theory of psychological types includes functions that correspond remarkably well to the four elements. Sensation focuses on concrete, present reality and tangible facts. Intuition perceives patterns, possibilities, and meanings beyond sensory data. Thinking makes decisions based on logical analysis, seeking objective truth. Feeling evaluates based on value and relational impact, seeking harmony. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of integrating all aspects of the psyche into a balanced whole, echoes the ancient elemental wisdom, with its emphasis on recognizing and honoring all elements of one's nature, rather than identifying exclusively with certain functions while projecting or repressing others. Contemporary therapeutic modalities continue to reflect elemental wisdom, often without explicit acknowledgement of these ancient roots. Cognitive behavioral therapy works primarily with the air element, focusing on thought patterns and mental constructs. Somatic therapies work primarily with the earth element, reconnecting clients with bodily sensations and physical self-regulation. Emotion-focused therapies work primarily with the water element, helping clients access, express, and integrate emotional experience. Motivational and existential approaches work primarily with the fire element, helping clients connect with values, meaning, and purposeful direction. Truly integrative approaches recognize the need to work with all four elemental dimensions, adapting emphasis according to the client's unique needs and constitution. Even contemporary neuroscience offers fascinating parallels to elemental psychology, suggesting that these ancient insights accurately recognized fundamental aspects of neural organization and function, from the sensorimotor networks, earth, to the limbic system, water, from the executive functions, air, to the dopaminergic motivation systems, fire. As we complete our historical journey, we arrive at a recognition that elemental thinking represents not a primitive precursor to modern understanding, but a perennial wisdom tradition that continues to offer profound insights into the nature of human experience. Its persistence across cultures and through millennia suggests that it captures something essential about how we perceive and organize our understanding of both the external world and our internal landscape. In an age of increasing specialization and fragmentation, where different aspects of human experience are parceled out to different experts and institutions, the elemental paradigm offers a unifying framework that honors the fundamental interconnection of physical, energetic, mental, and emotional dimensions. It reminds us that genuine well-being involves not maximizing any single aspect of our nature, but cultivating the right balance and relationship among all essential elements. As we move forward in our exploration, we'll examine each element in greater depth as a psychological force, explore practical approaches to identifying and balancing your unique elemental profile, and apply elemental wisdom to various domains from mental health to relationships to physical environments. Throughout this journey, we'll continue to draw on both ancient wisdom and contemporary understanding, recognizing that the most complete comprehension comes not from either or thinking, but from integrating diverse perspectives into a more comprehensive whole. Itself, a fundamentally elemental approach. 1. Which historical perspective on the elements resonates most with you? 2. How do you see ancient wisdom manifesting in modern psychological understanding? 3. What patterns from ancient elemental thinking do you recognize in your own life?